Hello and welcome to the Body Aware Living podcast. I'm Margo Rose, author of Body Aware Grieving, a fitness trainer's guide to caring for your health during sad times. We're together with kind and wise people from around the world. We're looking for practical ways to get through difficult challenges and to celebrate our accomplishments. It's important to remember that none of the comments made by myself or guests is meant to replace any legal or health services. Best wishes to you. Here we go. Today's episode of Body Aware Living is called From Battlefield to Barn, Finding Healing Through Horses, Breathwork, and Community. We have an incredibly special guest, Colonel Charlie Jenks, a 28-year military veteran and the founder of a nonprofit organization called Connecting Veterans with Horses. We're going to hear about his personal experiences with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and how he's currently helping more vets, their families, and others of us who've been through trauma find healing through time with horses and one another. Hope you enjoy this beautiful interview. Best wishes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Jenks. I'm the founder of Connecting Veterans with Horses. It's the equine therapy nonprofit. And it started with veterans and their families in mind, and that has grown. I think we've talked about before, beyond that, beyond just veterans, and we're looking to expand it as well, create a bigger nonprofit as well for all people who are looking to heal. And that's what's so cool, to be on here and talk a little bit about what we're doing. So thank you.
And you're a veteran as well. You've had, how many years were you serving the military, U.S. military?
Yes, so I was in the Army. I'm retired Army. I was in 28 years, served all over the world, a couple of tours of combat. Yeah. And my personal story is my first combat tour was 2005 in Afghanistan. And I knew something was off, shortly thereafter. Took about, I started having these severe panic attacks in like 2007, speaking in front of large audiences, just thinking maybe I was just nervous and not a great public speaker. And then it just kind of snowballed until really about 2016, early 2016 is when I first started to realize that, something's up, and maybe it might be related to PTSD. There's a lot of stigma as to people, I don't have PTSD, or I didn't do enough in combat to have PTSD, a lot of shame involved. And I was the same way. And it was really I think we talked about it the first time, a medical doctor at my physical said, "Hey, buddy, you meet all these checks, and have you seen the psychologist across the street?" And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Come on." And he was really down to earth and cool. And I was like, "Okay, I'll go see him." And that's really what started my path. So now here we're talking 7 years later, and some things started to work, and the consistencies were horses and meditation and breath work. And so I started my nonprofit to include that, to share that with others, but then other traditional equine therapy activities like riding, groundwork, and just hanging out with horses too. So it's been amazing. Yeah.
We're going to follow up with some really interesting questions about ourselves and about each other. And one question, and we're going to go into it a little more now than the previous interview, was how do we know we need help? And the other question that we're going to start looking at, which is way more fun, is how do we know what feeling good feels like? How do we know healing is happening? And my favorite question, I've been asking myself this a lot this year, is what will it be like to be happier than I've ever been? And some of those questions, and how do we get from point A to point B? And so we're going to go into many of the healing modalities that you're already doing, but we talked a little bit about all these different symptoms for PTSD. And so I did a little bit of research because I wanted to figure out the question, how do we know we need help? And I was researching after we said, there might be 12 symptoms that people in the military, the professionals are looking at. And I found some websites had 12, some websites listed 17, some websites were up to 100 examples of people having a hard time functioning well, and, discovering that they might need to do something different. And should I take just a second and read those off from my research?
Oh, yes.
All right. So, one was vivid flashbacks and nightmares. I'm like, okay. But then it gets into stuff that could be really hard to interpret in one's personal case. It was self-isolation, depression, substance abuse, emotional avoidance, feeling on edge or hyperarousal, memory loss, trouble concentrating, insomnia, negative outlook on the present or the future, physical symptoms like panic attacks, which you've mentioned, pain, sweating, nausea, feeling emotionally numb, struggling to regulate emotions, trouble maintaining personal or professional relationships, self-destructive behavior like drinking too much or driving too fast, and being easily upset and angry. And, that would just seem like a really long and potentially confusing list of things to try to figure out about oneself. Like, is it complicated to figure out, is that just who I am? Is that me trying to heal? Is what I'm experiencing within the range of normal? And it seems even more complicated if somebody actually is a vet or has been through some other forms of trauma. How does any of this land for you?
Yeah, I say check, check, check. No, it's like you're listing them all off, and that's what the doctor was kind of getting at to me, because we were having a long, detailed discussion, and he was like, you meet all of those. You're telling me about all of those, but you're not telling me directly what's going on, and that's the huge part, and that's why I keep going back to the horse. It was the horse that woke me up, in part, that hey, I needed help. It was me, and if I wanted something to change, I need to focus on me. And I know a lot of times we think of just thinking about us. We were even talking about this off right before. It's in a way selfish, but really it's what's needed. It was like when I shifted to focus working on me, then the relationships with others, and we were talking again about my children, but just people in general changed. And it was like I've been talked to with many big, high spiritual people, really spiritual people, who said, you open up your heart and things will happen. And, they're right in a way, so whether people are into that or not, it's like, focus on you. And it's always the question is like, so what do I do? And it's, like you're saying, there's many facets of healing, but the ones that consistently come, fruit for me is the meditation, the breath work, the getting inside of me, and then somehow you include these horses into that, and it's magical. It's so magical. Like, there was a veteran yesterday with us, and he, he's got his own story, he's on his own healing journey. He's a fascinating, brilliant guy, but you know what he needed yesterday? A hug from the horse. That's what he needed. We were going through breath work and all. I sent you, I just texted you the pictures too. That's all he needed, was a hug. And I'll always defer to them, the people, the participants, how they feel. Because I always ask them, just note how you feel now at the beginning and how you feel at the end. Because that's what I'm about. Like, these horses, just being around them made me feel better. So I just kept doing more of that, And by the way, it goes after your question, like, what does it feel like to be happier? Well, I know there's a jump or a bump in my time with them. So how do I keep tasting that? That was when I always say, even with the meditation, once I started tasting that more, like what it is I think you're talking about, that's when I got really excited about it. And I go, there's, to me, in the beginning, it was words. Do this meditation for 5 minutes or whatever. Try it. And it's like, yeah, how do I meditate when my mind is racing? But once I started tasting that just a little bit, I was like, tasting what? That happiness, that connection, all of that. And it's like, oh. And then after a bit, I started feeling better. I was like, I have to try to share this with others. And that's what, that was the genesis of our nonprofit, which is like 5 or 6 years ago now. It was like, I got to find a way through horses and through this breath work. And it just so happened that I could, we're at this amazing center that gives me the freedom to do this. I mean, it was just me in a stall in the beginning, and then it expanded, which you've seen, me in a round pen, which is a training pen for horses, with one horse and the participants of the class. And even that, there's some risk in that, right? Because people aren't horse people, they're nervous, they're in all those symptoms, what you just described. So the horse is picking up on all that stuff, right? So there could potentially be some, danger there, but it's just been so amazing because these horses are pros. They're therapy horses. They are on their second and third career. They're in their late teens, early 20s, and they're just so patient with us and with all. It's just amazing. I'll stop there. Sorry.
Well, you said, oh, I was feeling better. And that is exactly part of the question. Like, one thing you mentioned when we were off camera is like, I woke up feeling more optimistic. Like, how do we know what feeling better feels like? What else could we add to that list of things things you've seen your other vets experience? How do you know your vets and the other participants, the families of the vets and the other people who are joining your program? Like, what do you see in their behavior, in their outlook, in their posture? How can you tell when they're having benefit and healing happen?
Well, they keep coming back. That's the one.
Okay.
And it's ones like me that were skeptical in the beginning, like especially of all this woo, people say woo, whatever, meditation, like they're like, I don't know anything about that. I'm from the East Coast. I've never heard, it's like, okay, well, let's just think of this as exercise then. We're doing a breath exercise with a horse, and we're going to move around a little bit, and they keep coming back. But the one thing I always hear from them is the community. So it's like they belong somewhere. So it's that isolation part, right? Because you become one of those symptoms is you're detached from people. So this is a place you can come that not only the people are accepting of you, because we're all in a similar situation, but the horses live in the present and they're accepting of everyone. It's just like they're open. They're not going to push you off. If you're, again, if someone's up and they're really in a flight situation, I'm talking about a human, the horse is going to feel that. So they're going to respond to that a little bit. But really, what I see is the horse goes, all right, come here. I want to talk to you. And then the horse, which I think you saw the other day, just locks on somebody. I didn't tell you there's a follow-up to the story from Friday when you were even there. One of the veterans that I took the photos of where it's locked on this gentleman. What he told me was Saturday, he came back again Saturday class and was saying he was having this hard time with his throat locking up, like clamping up, which is a symptom I had too. Like you lose your voice. You hear that, right? You don't have the confidence to whatever that is. I was the same way. And that was part of my panic attacks and so forth. But this work clears that, I won't get too far into it. But what he was telling me was he felt that not only our practice was helping him, the horse helped him. And then his face, even yesterday, it was brighter. He had the other veterans were commenting on, you look clearer today. And I go, I didn't know it happened to him. I just knew that he needed something, in a sense. But the horse saw it first, because if you remember, the horse was trying to lead with you right before that, and then turned as we're doing that meditation for 5 minutes or so, and locks in on this gentleman. And I had to stop, and I do it all the time. I was like, I'm sorry, I have to take a video or a picture, because no one's, in the beginning I say no one's going to believe me, but it happens just about every time. But then the follow-up, like, then the guy came back the next day, which is not, and he lives like 30, 40 minutes away. It's not like he lives around the corner too. So there's something there that, whether it's community, whether it's feeling accepted, whether we're all in the same boat, have some sort of same story. Like this gentleman is a combat veteran who was injured in combat too, his lower leg and so forth. And, but then it has the
mental
PTSD
part too.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of material to be sharing. In addition to this podcast, the actual portion that we have, I've now been to your meditation with horses class twice, and I was taking some video and some photos. And we have a lot of material to start pulling together and sharing with people, because I also started doing videos with some of the vets and other participants with their permission And are we talking about Gonzalo? Is the example you're giving with Gonzalo?
Yes.
Okay, so I have an amazing video. I didn't get to send it to you yet. Gonzalo, last time I was there, did an amazing video with me. It was so honest and sweet. It was before we went out with the horses, and it's about 9 minutes long. I'd like to share it with you. I'd like to share it with your community, because I was asking here's like an injured vet, real McCoy, and I was like finding out how his program had affected you. And he goes, I'm just looking for joy. He's like, he was so honest, and I'm willing to say this because he said he gave permission that I was okay to share with this. But he was like, I was depressed. I was, it's confusing to come back. And after being in a military world, it's really confusing. It's easy to isolate when you feel confused like that. And I'm just looking for joy. And I thought that was the simplest request of what people are going through. And I just want to, since we're already here, I just want to talk briefly about this idea. One of the symptoms of worrisome symptoms of potential low function is listed as isolation. It's listed right near the beginning. But I also wanted to touch briefly on the idea that some people might just also want a little bit more time to themselves, especially if they're confused about how to interact socially. They might want to not make mistakes by keeping to themselves a little bit more. And there's also people who are more extroverted. And so, good signs of more health for them, if they're extroverted, they want to go out in a crowd, and they want to be somewhere loud, and they want to connect with a lot of people. But there's other people, and I'll include myself in this category, especially increasingly, where we're kind of introverted. Like for us, what might feel good, the amount of alone time or isolation we might actually get benefit from is also very much based on our personality. Does that make sense, that there's a continuum? I don't think isolation is automatically a risk factor. Right. I know I am not a mental health professional. I am not trying to replace the mental health or professional services anybody needs. This is just me just trying to learn and add vocabulary to that. But would you agree that some people just...
I think it depends on their personality. I do know from talking to them, and again, I'm not a professional either, and I generally don't talk to even the veterans about their specific situation unless they want to share something with me. And generally, then I just listen to them. And because I really think the horse is the healer, like this is the professional, but I just help try to create the environment. But I do hear a lot of the veterans talk about their isolation and just the fact that they don't like leave their home ever, though. We're talking not even like, hey, I need a weekend to kind of decompress because I'm that way too. If I'm busy during the week, I need a day to kind of recover. I've always been that way. And, in relationships and stuff, I've been with extroverts where they just want to be out. And I'm like, I just need one day, or after a work week, I just need Friday night and then I'll be good on Saturday. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it's different people. There's a great book out, you might have, Quiet, I believe is the name of it. And it goes into that exactly. It's saying you're not, then it goes into like Harvard Business School. People they look for extroverts for the MBA program, right? That's what they're looking for. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to be that way, to thrive. And then she goes into like studies of like, most of the world leaders and business leaders are introverts because they think, and you have those people out there to do that work, the extrovert work, but you need a balance of it. And that's why I think it's like anything. I think it's individual and you need a balance. And that's why I'll keep going back to it. And I know this may not sound right. It may sound off because I always talk about like meditation and stuff, like, because in the beginning it sounded off to me. I was like, what are you talking about? Like Qigong meditation, and it was like, but I truly believe like you need to get inside yourself to get those answers, to like answer to be like, A, I need a break. A, I need to back off. Or A, I need to engage. That's the part I go like, I always tell people like I'm on a path. I don't know where it's going, but it just feels good to be on that path. And my path is totally inconsistent with, because most people like in my situation retired, they got some sort of contracting job with the government, supporting the government, whatever, because I were ex-military. And I was like, it sounds enticing. I'd make more money and all that stuff. I was like, I really have to work on me. Otherwise it's just going to keep snowballing, and I think finding the answers come from within. That's my opinion. Again, I'm no expert on, I'm just talking about myself at this point, but that's what I'm finding, and I'm seeing it with others too. That's what's cool about being in this community now.
Well, I mean, every time we talk, there's a million more things to talk about. It's always fascinating, and there's always more to go into. And there's something you talked about. I want to go back to it because it was really super important, and it's how do we know improvement is happening? And you mentioned that after your time with horses and learning to regulate your own kind of emotions and connect, and that a wider range of emotions was okay to experience, and you found some safe people and places to be around. So, isolated or with who? Like, how does each person know when they feel safe? How do they know if an environment is safe, fun, beneficial? And that's what you've helped create with people. They can, even if they tend to like a lot of isolation, they'll come around you and the horses, and they'll be like, okay, this is the kind of connection that actually enhances my feelings. And you were talking about a part of your own journey with that, where you described it as becoming a better father. You had this breakthrough that you're willing to be more honest with your kids. People wishing they could be closer to their fathers, or fathers wishing they could be closer, is so important. And could you tell us more, if it's not too personal, what was that experience of getting closer to your kids like?
Oh yeah, I don't know that I would say it's even being a better father. I think it's just being a better human, in that my one teacher it's a master's, his name is Sam Tam. He's up in Vancouver, but he always talks about becoming whole. Our work is to become whole. And then when we become whole, then we can be connected to the greater, to people and all this stuff. And I feel like through the work of me internally in many cases, right? And however people get after that, whether it's, prayer and all that stuff and meditation, there's many ways to get, in my opinion, to get after it. But it caused me to be more open and to be more vulnerable. And that's when my kids, like, you're their dad. They're always trying to put you up on the pedestal. They want you to be something greater, right? Oh, my dad did this, my dad did that. But when they see that your dad's just human, that was the part that it was like, because there's still like that friction too, when there is that pedestal, you're separated in a sense. But when they realized that I was struggling, I think it was really when it's changed. So I don't pretend to be like a perfect dad or anything, but our relationship, I feel, and you'd have to ask them too on their side, but we can talk now. There's no like barrier to talking. There's not, they should not, and again, I defer to them. There shouldn't be like, hey, I missed, this is what happened. And they're afraid to tell me. Like, no, just tell me. And we've already had that, school and all this stuff. So it's like, that's when, like, through the work on myself, caused me to be more vulnerable, to be more open. And that's when I think our connection became greater. And I think now we're great friends in a sense, even though I'm their dad. And in some cases I have to have that more of that role. But I think we're more friends in a sense, we're just more open, and we try to support one another. That's what I feel. And it was through, again, I go back, it was really through the horses. It was through another gentleman, Monty Roberts, who has a veteran program, who sat down with my 3 kids and me and he is like a PhD, and he's on a couple of them, I think, in the mental health world too. And he talked to us about it. And he was just like, so what's going on? It was just very basic stuff. But that was the first time we really like addressed, like, not grievances, but what's going on. And then from there, it just got further. It's just grown, I feel.
Some mentorship, some wisdom, some willing to be more open, some, all of this sounds like what more people wish they could do with their families, or perhaps families of choice, just finding mentors. If your own family isn't a place where you can find the healing, then finding healing with what you're talking about, mentors, people who are older, people who are learned, people you can trust, people who want to look out for you. I think we can create those relationships. Who has wisdom we want and need, and who's willing to look out for us. And part of just one thing I'm still so curious about. You were mentioning that at some point in this willingness to be more vulnerable, that you had an experience you hadn't had in a long time that involved crying. Like at some point, you know, crying is a healing tool. It's a tool to cleanse the spirit, release some emotions. And would you be willing to share what crying felt like after you hadn't done it in a long time?
Oh yeah, it was, because you're kind of like this. I was kind of like this, knock this battery off my shoulder, or people like me don't cry or whatever. So I didn't really cry like my whole life. I mean, I probably could count it on one hand, like how many times I've cried, maybe before, like 6, 7 years ago. But I think it was more of letting go. And it helped that a friend of mine was crying right before me, who I thought, again, wouldn't cry. In a group, we're in a group setting, and we were given some feedback on what we just experienced with a horse again. And he opened up, and I was like, whoa, that totally, because I was next then to speak. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that just totally blew me. Because I would have given like some straight face answer. Yeah, it was nice or whatever. And then he starts crying, and it just it probably allowed me to cry. I don't know. But ever since then, I was like, yeah, I mean, it's okay. But I still think it's like, it's letting go. I mean, it's like we're holding all this stuff. It can't be good. I mean, that's why we do this meditation, the breath work, and qigong. It's about letting go and connecting, and that's what I feel. It's like, just breathe. My teacher, I think I mentioned this the other day, but it's like, do you breathe out of every cell of your body? It's like, no, I don't. I breathe out of this tube. It's like respiratory system. Like, yeah, but yeah, well, when you breathe that way, you're still like contracting every part of your body. It's like, why? It's a waste of time. It's like, especially if you're not lifting something or something. It's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Just let go. And it's so easy. I always say this stuff sounds so simple. Just let go. You've heard that your whole life, right? Just let it go. But then to do it is another thing. It's
A whole
another
new thing.
level of it. It's
Well,
like,
I mean, what would you say, having experienced this emotional release, this physical release, this refreshing sort of cleansing sounding moment? Like, what would you say to people who think, oh, is it masculine to cry? Like, or they've been trained it's not masculine to, what is the message from Charlie Jenks to the world on this topic of masculinity and crying?
say ego gets in the way, right? So you have to let go of that ego. It's like, I've heard so many times over, and I think I mentioned this, but it's like, I didn't even think I had PTSD because we're not supposed to have it, first in the beginning, right? And I was an officer too. I was a leader. You're not supposed. And then there was the whole like guilt of like, well, was I really in that like combat like these other warriors? No. So it's like that shame thing. So it's just like, all this stuff is like, or you name this, the Marines don't have PTSD. It's like, what? You're killing me. Like, leaders are saying this, or you pick the four. I'm not trying to pick on the Marines, but it's like, we're not perfect, and you can show your vulnerability, and it's just like, that's the part. Again, I keep going back. It was the horse. The horse told me, because the horse lives in the present, and it told me, hey buddy, you're jacked up. It's not me, it's you. And I'm like, because they're just responding to you. And it's like, and if something's not quite right, yeah, they could be a wild horse or whatever, but if they're relatively trained and they're kind of, and they start jumping around, you go like, it's like, don't lunge at them or anything. It just kind of moves slow. It's like, yeah, it's so crazy. But that was the part where, like, just said, it's okay. One of my mentors, speaking of a mentor, he's a therapist that works with veterans and trained therapist. And he's just like, most of you guys just need a hug. Most of you big macho guys just need a hug. And I go, you're probably right. It's like, yeah, we never got that. I mean, we're too tough to get that. You know what I mean? He's like, that's what I find, this guy. And he hugs everybody. That's his deal. He's like, he just hugs people. And some people don't, I didn't want to be hugged in the beginning, because I was like, that PTSD, like, get away from me, buddy. I don't want anyone near me. But he was right at the end of the day. Like I said about the veteran yesterday, he just wanted to hug a horse. And this is a macho guy, like attack helicopter pilot guy. You're like, it's pretty cool to see.
Well, there's a million different ways you're helping other people, and you've channeled what you've been learning into all this beautiful new program, connecting veterans with horses. Now expanding that to try to reach out to more people. And before we run out of time, I just want to, thank you for everything. Thank you for all the different kinds of service you've already performed and the current way that you're wanting to grow this program. And how can we help what you're doing be more successful? What are some of the things we can contribute and provide so that this vision grows the way you hope to?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd like just get the word out that, like we're just talking about, like you're not the only one that's going. Not that it's not important or downplaying it, but there's a lot of us are going through the same thing. So get the word out that there are people who are trying to work on this collectively together. And it's all different.
Social media. People could share this on social media. Yeah. Everything you've said, we've got all this material and all this content we're coming up with. So one way people can help you and help what you're doing next is to share some of these clips and these videos on social media. You were also mentioning about people who have land, people who have horses, people who might want to have some sort of small version or a pilot program across the United States or maybe the world, that there's other facilities that have horses that might want to invite some portion of what you're doing to be on their land and with their horses. Is that a possibility?
Because that is where part of what the name came from, Connecting Veterans with Horses. It was really just me being like going out to each spoke of where they provided services that are somewhat similar to ours, And so, yes, we're looking to grow. I'm looking to grow within my organization, but I know that there's a lot of great, maybe it's just identifying, hey, we're doing something similar, because I keep finding like-minded people that are doing, they call it something and they're more technical and they're certified and all this stuff. I go, yeah, we're kind of doing the same thing, but yeah, you are a medical doctor, I'm not, but it's like, it's pretty cool. So that, and then funding too, like we are looking for donations as well. Because my goal is to turn these programs over to veterans, like let them grow them to run these again around the world, around the country at least, but maybe around the world too. Like we can establish a program that has the juice to pay people to do it, and give them, and then grow them to teach others. That's really my goal. And I don't foresee me like doing this, on the grassroots level for a long time, but I want to be part of it and help run this organization, after I turn it over to people that we've kind of helped maybe get back on their feet, but maybe just need a little bump and, to get there or so, and a little help to get there. So that's kind of where I'm looking for. So yeah, this is the word. If the people are generous enough to donate some, then you can go to my webpage, connectingveteranswithhorses.com.
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again more slowly. Your webpage.
Veteranswithhorses.com.
Okay.
Or it's on Instagram. You can get there too. It has my webpage there, but on Instagram, it's Connecting Veterans with Horses as well. We post all of our weekly. We post our videos and photos from our sessions. We're really trying to make the horses. Now there's 9 horses, the celebrities too, because they really are. So, I mean, that's going to be another project I'm trying to get someone to run, to show you these amazing healers. And they all have had their different paths of lives too. They're competitors and stuff, dressage and all this stuff. And you really can see, like, these are some amazing horses, but they're healers. That's the cool thing. They're locked in. Once we start class, and you've seen it, but it's so cool to see how I just kind of let them take over. That is what I feel. I still facilitate, and that's what happened again yesterday.
Yeah. So if people want this type of healing, if people want this type of message, if people want more of Charlie Jenks and more people to feel and behave, like with all this, who do we become when we become happier than we've been? Like, and how do we start using those new happier selves out in the world? It's just such a fun question. So media support, cooperation with other organizations that have similar goals, that we can collaborate. We don't all have to run our organization separately. You have the donation button on your website, and we can include a link to that. And, I'm interested. We have almost enough material for me to do a full-length documentary about your program already. And if people want to learn about that or support about that, they can also go to my website, which is, because I'm doing this full time too. Like, I want to be supportive of this. I'm willing to use my time, my energy, my wisdom, my curiosity to put a highlight on all the different healing modalities, especially those with horses. So if you want to help support any of that, you could go to bodyawareliving.com. And bodyawareliving.com already has a way to stay connected by email, so I can let you know what Charlie's up to, let you know what my other guests are up to as they develop. I'll keep you posted if you want to stay connected by email. And I think I'm going to put a contribute button on my website too, because I want to do this full time. And if people wanted to donate, I'll put it on my website. I mean, contribute. I'm not a nonprofit I'm a not profitable yet organization, meaning it's just me trying to, right now, doing all this stuff is just really an extremely expensive hobby, because I pay people to help me with all the tech stuff. It's hard. So I'm going to put a contribute section on Body Aware Living website as well. I'll have to figure out how to do that. But I will donate back to Charlie's organization a portion of any contributions I get to start making these documentaries about his program. And I start documenting other programs like this that are looking for ways to, practical ways to care for our health during the best and worst of times. So all that's coming up. We're going to have a lot of those links in the show notes. Charlie, thank you so much for your time, for everything you're doing. Yay, hooray, more Charlies. We need more Charlie Jenks out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been nice connecting with you. Thank you for coming. And for everyone else, yes, you put so much effort into this. So we're so grateful. And hopefully that people will see that and grow your side, because we won't be able to, if people are into this, which I keep finding, like I said, like-minded people into even the horses and meditation and stuff like that, that you'll be the source to show us that. So that's what's cool. So thank you for what you're doing too.
Thank you. I'll put 100% of my time in if I can afford to do so. This is really a big passion. Thank you so. I'm sorry, say the last thing. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say, it's noted, the time that you have to put into it. Just in the little time I've met you, how much effort you put in already. It's appreciated.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We will be in touch.